Hey everyone, can you hear me?
Hello. Yes.
Alpha, yeah, thank you. Hi Maurice.
Hey Mary, how's it going today?
Hi, it's going good. It's dark here now, but sun was out a little bit.
It's dark already? Oh my goodness.
Oh yes.
Oh yeah, I guess
Well,
five
already
hours,
for you, it's like
seven,
4 p.m.
7 hours
here.
makes sense. Makes sense. It is winter time.
Yeah, I bet you have similar to us up there in Canada.
Yeah, I always forget the northern parts, right? Where you are, the sun sets a little bit early, that part of the world in winter time as well. So yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Man, I was saying to Alpha, I think I got about 2 hours, just under 2 hours sleep. I ended up getting so lost in the prep material for this one last night. I think I was doing
Oh
research
my
till
God.
6 in the morning, and then I had to wake up for an 8 a.m. AMA. Hosted that, and now I'm here in this space, and I honestly couldn't be
So
more
maybe
excited.
I should
So.
just take a step back then today, Maurice. What is
No, I mean,
No.
it's more so about breaking it down for the community. I mean, I love to kind of deep dive, especially, a project like this. I will say, first and foremost, this team at THORChain and with the utilities they've built up, very impressive. And I can't wait to jump into it. So I'll let you kind of do your
Yeah.
initial lead up and everything, but I'm very, very excited for this one. I couldn't even sleep, honestly, last night.
Great. So let's start this properly, guys. So welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Crypto Miners Twitter space. My name is Mary, and I will be your host, together with Maurice from Caesar's Call that you just heard now. And also a reminder that anything we talk about in here is for educational purpose only and should not be taken as a financial advice of any kind. So do your own research, guys. And as Maurice pointed out, today we are honored to have a presentation from THORChain, I should say. So we have Mr. Eridanus, Senior Manager, and Mr. Pluto from the security, and Mr. Familiar Cow, Comms Director. Are you all here, guys?
Hey, how's it going? Good to be here. Familiar Cow, unfortunately, will not be able to join us, so it'll just be Pluto and I today.
All right, no worries. Maybe he can listen later if he wants to. Okay.
Absolutely.
So yeah, how was your Christmas, guys?
Very good. Yeah, had a nice time. Had a nice, break from the craziness of crypto for, a few days, but excited to get back into things in the new year.
Yeah, starting over again now. Crypto never sleeps, they say, but maybe we had Christmas. I don't really know, but I did anyway. And Eridanus, you're here too? Or who was speaking now? Pluto.
That was Eridanus. Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, this is
Okay,
Pluto. Hey
good.
guys, how's it going?
Great to have you here too, Mr. Pluto. So
Thank you.
maybe we could have a little presentation of you two guys, who you are to the project and how long you have been with it, and when did you start crypto?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Eridanus, and both Pluto and I work for a company called Nine Realms. Nine Realms makes up most of the core contributors to the THORChain protocol at this point. And we also, run the security team of the network. We run public infrastructure for the ecosystem. We run validators, things like that. So overall, contributing to the core protocol itself and supporting the ecosystem through infrastructure, security, and developer tooling. So I've personally been working on THORChain for a little over a year and a half now, as an engineer working on the protocol itself, and more recently working on integrations for THORChain. So that's working with external wallet teams, external DEX teams, in order to integrate THORChain's capabilities, unique capabilities into their DApps and wallets, in order to give their users access to some very powerful features that we'll go into. So that's kind of my headline.
Great intro, Eridanus. Yeah, you can think of Nine Realms as kind of like the consensus of the THORChain community. So we're sort of like the official public-facing, company behind the open source protocol. So while we develop open source software that's run by, all the validators, we also, assist with things like governance. So, we'll basically keep track of the architecture design records and sort of formally educate node operators on what the different decisions and levers that they can pull in the network. And so maybe we can talk a little bit about that today, because I think that's kind of one of the interesting and unique things about THORChain is just how the sort of the validators like own and operate the network. But we as Nine Realms, our role is essentially to affect the will of the node operators. So if they say we want this feature, or we can say we think this feature would be good, they will essentially signal to us like either yes, develop that, or don't. And as for myself, I've been working in crypto for about half a decade. I worked for one of the earliest Ethereum-based decentralized exchanges back when they said that cross-chain swaps weren't really possible. It's sort of like this was the holy grail of decentralized exchange was being able to go not just within one network using a smart contract, but being able to go across networks. So I've been following THORChain quite closely, during its development, and once it essentially reached traction, and there was it was clear that THORChain had overcome a lot of the hurdles that a lot of people said would be impossible. That's when I really started to take more notice and join as earlier as just like running infrastructure and a node, and then kind of getting more interested in the inner workings of the core protocol, and eventually joining as a developer. So yeah, that's a bit of my background.
Great. Thank you so much, guys. Interesting. So I haven't done the same amount of research as Maurice has, because I like my beauty sleep. But
if you want me to
THORChain,
jump in, I was going to kind of, I had a specific question, and Pluto really gave me a great segue, Mary, if you don't mind. I wanted to
I
go
was
back
thinking
to the
first,
start.
Maurice, I thought maybe we should just let them introduce like THORChain for everyone who's in here, maybe who don't know much about it. So maybe like an elevator speech first, and then you can jump in, Maurice.
Sounds like a plan.
Cool.
So
Yeah,
I'm
happy
tell us
to
in a few
take that one.
sentences what it is
Yeah.
about.
Yeah, absolutely. So THORChain, builds on a lot of the concepts that we've seen, prevailing across decentralized exchanges over the past 5 years. So, in Ethereum or any of the other smart contracting platforms, Uniswap was one of the major innovations in their automated market maker pool design. So basically allowing people to put up two sides of a pool that could be Ethereum and USDC, which is one of the largest and deepest pools on Uniswap. It allowed people to become liquidity providers and essentially earn yield from the fees that are taken from swapping. And so it's a very, very simple model, very clear incentives. But there's two problems with that design. The first is, of course, the miner extracted value. So the issue of people front running trades and just basically sandwiching trades. So that's just sort of like one of the inevitable problems with like running a decentralized exchange on a shared security platform like Ethereum. And then the other issue is that it's inherently not cross-chain. So if you want to transact in Bitcoin through a Uniswap pool, you have to use a wrapped asset like WBTC. So those were two of the main challenges that THORChain wanted to address was how do we improve on the existing AMM design? And we did so using a novel slip-based fee model. Because we are our own sovereign chain, there's not the same opportunities for MEV as there are on something like Ethereum. Basically, we have a novel way of ordering transactions that orders them by how much liquidity fees they generate for the network, rather than an arbitrary ordering of transactions that any Ethereum miner could do. So there are some key ways that we improved upon the Uniswap's design, but really what you can think of THORChain is a Uniswap style AMM for all cross-chain assets. So we integrate directly with native L1 assets like Bitcoin, Ethereum, BNB, no wrapped assets. And to my knowledge, there is no other decentralized exchange on the planet that's able to do what we do, which is, for example, sending Bitcoin to a native Bitcoin address and receiving back L1 Ethereum to a native Ethereum address. Without any sort of signups or logins. Like it's literally just like the API is, here are the vaults. If you send this much to this address, this is how much you should expect to get back. So it's a really interesting design. But one of the challenges of that is that THORChain has to actually observe the transaction state of every other chain. So our network is just one of the most complicated networks, one of the most infrastructure intensive networks, due to the fact that our validators don't just run the THORChain, they don't just validate the THORChain network. They also run full nodes for every other network that we're connected to. So THORChain is a really, really complex piece of software. But what it does very well, which is linking together different chains and allowing, through our DEX aggregation pattern, people to sort of chain calls. So we can actually have it so that you can swap Bitcoin to USDC through the Uniswap ETH USDC pool. So the ETH USDC transaction would go through Uniswap. The ETH Bitcoin transaction would go through THORChain. And so there's a ton of aggregators that are being built on top of the THORChain protocol. And Eridanis can speak to more of the integrations that we're doing. But really, the strategy of THORChain's adoption has not been that of, get everyone to understand THORChain and as like a household brand name. That's actually not our objective. Our objective is to get integrated in these consumer applications. And actually, people won't even know they're using THORChain. They'll just be swapping in the Trust Wallet app, for example, without actually knowing that they're using THORChain. And so that's one of the beauties of THORChain as well, is that it's a native asset infrastructure. It kind of disappears behind the scenes and really just facilitates transfer of value across networks. Eridanis, if you wanted to add sort of more in context about how THORChain, how our integration strategy works.
Yeah, absolutely. We can kind of just give a high level, and then I'm sure there's some questions to answer as well. But yeah, so the idea, as Pluto was mentioning, is that THORChain is meant to, it's a back-end protocol really, and it's meant to be built upon. So we don't want THORChain to be front and center, have a big brand, be known by everyone in crypto. Obviously that's going to happen just by getting these integrations. But the kind of the vision of THORChain is to kind of disappear into the background and be the native asset cross-chain rails for the entire crypto ecosystem. As Pluto was mentioning, there's things that THORChain can uniquely do that no other cross-chain protocols can do. For example, we're chain agnostic, so we can integrate with UTXO chains like Bitcoin and Dogecoin and Litecoin. We can integrate with Cosmos-based chains. We can integrate with EVM-based chains. There's actually no type of chain out there that theoretically THORChain cannot access, which is very unique in the cross-chain space. And we deal with native assets, not wrapped assets, not locked up assets, things like that. So there is a very unique value proposition that THORChain offers. And the vision of THORChain is to get integrated into all of the crypto wallets that want to provide their users with decentralized chain swaps across chain, and just provide that back end native asset rails, and kind of get integrated everywhere. That's the vision, and that's what we're working on.
That sounds amazing to me. I mean, I think that you are, as you also said, unique because no one else is doing exactly the same, right? You don't really have any competitors that I know of. Maybe there are some. But before we unleash Maurice with some questions here now, you mentioned like Bitcoin, Ethereum, BNB, Bitcoin Cash also, I think, Litecoin, Avalanche, Cosmos, and Doge blockchains, right? That you can swap easily between and get the native coin back, not a wrapped one.
Yep. That's correct.
But also now you said all the EVM chains or all the EVM coins can also be swapped. Is that like, so my question to come was when or what other coins are going to come into this, but they are already there. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I think what Pluto was mentioning is what's called DEX aggregation. So this is a feature that was built, I think, probably 6 or 7 months ago. And essentially what it is it allows you to daisy chain different decentralized exchange liquidity pools together in order to access kind of these more exotic trading routes. So for example, we can leverage Uniswap's liquidity pools to access more of the long tail assets on Ethereum and Avalanche without needing the liquidity pools in THORChain itself. So for example, if you wanted to swap from the Uni token to Bitcoin, what you could do is swap from Uni to ETH on Uniswap, because that has a very deep liquidity pool there, and then ETH to Bitcoin on THORChain. But the user only signs one transaction. Essentially, the DEX aggregation feature has these smart contracts that wrap Uniswap's liquidity pools and then deposit into THORChain in order to daisy chain these two liquidity pools together. And the user is just doing the ETH, just signing the Uni transaction, and they're saying, I want to swap from Uni to Bitcoin. THORChain under the hood does the first swap from Uni to ETH in Uniswap, and then does the ETH to Bitcoin swap through THORChain. The user ends up with native Bitcoin. So again, this opens up a crazy amount of exotic routes where certainly the only place in the world to swap, SHIB to Doge, for example, in a decentralized fashion, besides using a centralized exchange, is THORChain. And there's thousands and thousands of these cross-chain native asset routes that are available. And that's why I think the main competitor to THORChain really is not another cross-chain protocol or DEX. It's really centralized exchanges. I mean, that's really, we are trying to replicate all the functionality of a centralized exchange, but in a decentralized fashion.
Great.
If anyone is interested in kind of seeing this visually, you can go to app.rango.exchange. And that's just one of the dozen or so DEXs that I know of that are building on top of the THORChain protocol. But Rango does a really good job of sort of demonstrating this DEX aggregation pattern that we're talking about. So if you go into rango.exchange and you type Uniswap to Bitcoin, it will show you that route.
Okay, cool.
Do you have a tweet that you'd be able to send me just in DMs, like a link to their Twitter, so that I could pin it up on the Jumbotron so people could follow along?
Yeah, cool.
Oh yeah, good idea.
Cool.
Nice.
Awesome. Thanks, Pluto.
Yeah, Eridanis, do you want to speak a little bit about how the focus of THORChain is mainly around the L1s because the DEX aggregation pattern it means that we don't necessarily have to pool those long tail tokens on THORChain directly?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great point. So yeah, as Pluto was mentioning, like one of the most powerful things about the DEX aggregation feature is that we can leverage these external liquidity pools. And as we all know, in DeFi, liquidity and TVL, these are the things that every protocol is competing against each other to get, right? DeFi liquidity dries up and then your protocol is dead. So THORChain is able to leverage external liquidity pools without having to focus on, if imagine we didn't have DEX aggregation and we wanted our users to swap for every EVM token out there for Bitcoin, then we would need a liquidity pool for every EVM token on THORChain. And we understand and we realize that we're not going to be able to compete with Uniswap and SushiSwap and all of these DEXs on Ethereum and we're not going to be able to compete for that liquidity. Liquidity is going to be fragmented across all of the DEXs. So instead, we want to focus on just having the deepest Ethereum pool on THORChain, the deepest Bitcoin pool, the deepest BNB pool, the deepest Doge pool. And if we go after the gas asset of each L1 and focus on attracting as much liquidity into those pools, then I think over time we will have the deepest pool anywhere of Ethereum, of Bitcoin, of all these assets, and then we're able to leverage the external liquidity pools of the other DEXs on Ethereum and Avalanche for these long tail assets that, again, we're never going to be able to compete with for the deepest pool there. So that just allows us to focus on what really is important, and really what the bread and butter of THORChain is in terms of swapping is the cross-chain swap, right? So let's just focus on having the deepest gas asset pool and allow the other DEXs to kind of have this liquidity for the long tail asset.
Great,
Right.
thank you for that explanation. Now I think we have to let Maurice in for.
Yeah, so I
Let's
just
do
wanted
it.
to
Sorry.
add
Yeah.
I just wanted to add one thing. So
Yeah,
it's,
sure.
it's that exact sort of like preference for going for the L1 asset for each chain rather than the the ERC20s that or the BEP2s, BEP20s that actually it makes us, that's why we don't see ourselves as a competitor to Uniswap or to PancakeSwap. We recognize that each ecosystem is, on Avalanche, there's what is the Avalanche DEX? That's Trader Joe, right? So like each ecosystem is going to have its own sort of DEX. On the Cosmos ecosystem, for example, there is Osmosis, right? Every ecosystem already kind of has a DEX that is like the premier venue for pooling tokens within that ecosystem. So THORChain doesn't actually compete with those DEXs itself. We actually augment their capabilities by giving them access to all the other ecosystems via our DEX aggregation. So it's important when people ask us all the time. We always get asked, is Uniswap a competitor? Is this or that? It's no. Decentralized exchanges are very much complementary to THORChain, and it's centralized exchanges that we're actually trying to disrupt.
Great. But you talked now about liquidity and so, and THORChain also uses single asset liquidity pools, right? And because you only have RUNE, how do you pronounce your name? RUNE?
Rune. Yep.
RUNE.
Correct.
Yeah, me being from Sweden, we have RUNE, so that's why.
Everything is it's all Norse mythology based.
Yeah.
Asgard, Ragnarok, all that good stuff.
That's great. I like it very much. So because you're paired, every token or coin is paired with RUNE, right?
Yeah. So how the liquidity pools work? Yeah.
Sorry, Maurice.
Yeah, we'll just talk quickly about the liquidity pools and then let Maurice get a word. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, that's perfect. I was honestly going to bring up the fact that you guys, obviously playing off of the Thor name, seem to Pluto, Eridanus. There's a lot of mythology and Norse lore within the name, so that was going to be one of the points I brought up. You guys are nailing it. Thanks. I'm just going to stay quiet now.
Yeah, for the Nine Realms, the Nine Realms guys, we kind of went on a more of a space themed Latin, constellation vibe. But anyway, keeping kind of in the realm of the theme. Anyway, so the liquidity pools, yes, Mary, as you mentioned, every asset, every external L1 asset that has a liquidity pool in THORChain is paired with RUNE. So instead of, and this is another, I think, great design improvement that THORChain accomplished was having every asset paired with RUNE instead of having this liquidity fragmentation that you see in external DEXs like Uniswap. Because if you imagine on Uniswap, any trading pair that you want to be able to trade on Uniswap needs its own liquidity pools. ETH USDC, ETH USDT, ETH Uni, ETH Link USD. Every single liquidity pool. But for THORChain, since every asset is paired with RUNE and every asset is internally priced against RUNE, we have just, again, we have one pool per asset, and that gives us a wide amount of trading options just with the liquidity pools that we have. So we have 27, I think, liquidity pools in THORChain right now, but that actually provides like something like 400 trading pairs just in THORChain's liquidity pools themselves, because THORChain understands the price of each asset against RUNE. So you can trade Bitcoin against any other asset that has a liquidity pool in THORChain, and vice versa, right? So that just, that also kind of solves this liquidity fragmentation that we see, internalized in other dexes.
Yeah, because that makes you stronger. You have one huge pool instead of lots of others, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. All right, Maurice, it's your turn. Come on.
Yeah, no, so I just wanted to kind of go back and touch on something you guys first mentioned, right? And with regards to, the whole DEX conversation is, kudos to them. They're making your job a little bit easier for you right now. So that's obviously great to see. And I wanted to walk back because when you guys first brought this thing to light in 2018, you dubbed your initial product the multi-chain chaos net is essentially what you guys called it. So playing off of that theory, you were the first to do it. It was met with a lot of how can you do this? There's no possible way. And to see where you've gone from 2018 to now where we are kind of pushing into 2023 with your main net and your token launching back in the summer of this year. I know you guys did some pretty cool things with regards to that Binance airdrop and stuff like that to gain some hype and gain some attention onto the project. So I was just hoping you really walk us through maybe some of the major, again, it's going to be a loaded question because you guys have so many, but some of the major milestones or some of your favorite moments like you guys have been a part of, because to go from 2018 where, again, you guys were looked at as kind of game changers and maybe a little bit crazy at the time with what you brought to the market, and where you are now. I know a lot of our channel members who are big into these liquidity-based projects have actually heard of you. And I know a few of our channel members are actually invested. So I can't wait to hear kind of the story of how it's grown from what you started as to where you're at right now.
Yeah, definitely. So when I first started getting interested in the protocol, it was still in what was called the single chain chaos net. And there was definitely chaos, but the single chain was basically saying, let's prove out this concept of like the slip-based model, all the things I was talking about, like in terms of the white paper's improvements on Uniswap's AMM model. So what the single chain chaos net was saying, let's just prove this out using Binance BEP2 assets. And if we can prove this out, all the same concepts should apply when we bring in all the other chains, but let's just focus on one chain for now and see if we can prove out the model within the Binance chain. So that was all of like what single chain was about. And then when we launched multi-chain, that's when we brought Bitcoin, Ethereum, Bitcoin Cash, and Litecoin into the fold. And that was a very, very exciting time. There was obviously a lot of hype because people were just starting to realize like, wow, you can actually swap Bitcoin L1 to Bitcoin Ethereum. This is revolutionary. I think the elephant in the room, and of course probably what a lot of people are asking about and often what we see, are the July 2021 hacks. And so that was a period in which there were 2 or 3, it depends on how you count them, but within a short sustained period, THORChain did experience a number of hacks, and there was a lot of learnings from those, and that was actually what led to Nine Realms, our company, kind of stepping up and taking over the role of like network operator and security auditor for the network. And so that was really a catalyst for really, really doubling down on security. But I will point out that those hacks were actually of our EVM integration with the Ethereum chain. So the smart contracts that we were using on the Ethereum chain had flaws in them that somehow passed all of the audits. Again, this was like prior to Nine Realms involvement, but you know, there was audits that had passed, but nonetheless there was a exploit that allowed hackers to drain, I think, over $10 million from only the Ethereum pools. And the THORChain treasury made all of the liquidity providers whose funds were stolen whole again. So no one lost any money in that attack, again, except for the THORChain treasury, but it dealt a major blow to our reputation, and one that we're still sort of seeing. You know, people are always bringing it up, but one of the things that I want to point out is that there was never any fundamental flaw in THORChain's core design principles, in its AMM model, or in its security model, in its economic model, in its pool model, or in its cryptographic vaults. The major cryptographic innovation that makes THORChain possible, that makes these cross-chain vaults, you know, even doable, is called TSS. And so none of that was actually breached. It was really just the integration with Ethereum and the smart contract that was deployed on Ethereum that was actually vulnerable. So I just wanted to clear up that, because that's a common misconception. It's like, oh, THORChain is insecure, THORChain. Well, it was really just this small subset of THORChain's overall functionality. And to this day, no one has ever been able to do any sort of like economic manipulation attack, or like other type of overarching attack on THORChain as a whole. And so I think that that's an important clarification to make. And, you know, we wear our scars with honor. We understood sort of what led to that, and we put in place a dedicated security team, and really leveled up, you know, just the overall operations and auditing of the network since then. So that's obviously, you know, an elephant in the room. Wanted to address that. That was obviously very painful for the project. 2021 was, you know, widely known as the summer of DeFi hacks. So, you know, there was, I think every other week there was a different protocol getting popped on Rect. But, you know, I think it's one of those things that, you know, just kind of further demonstrates like the maturity of the protocol. And yeah, so basically there's, you know, the way that THORChain integrates with individual chains, you know, we can only be as strong as the security for that specific chain. And so that's also something I would be interested to touch on real quick, is how do we do security from an economic and from a technical perspective. So if you'd like, I can jump into that, but I'm wondering if there's any other questions. Oh, sorry,
Well,
you were asking about the timeline. Yeah, I think since then, the two other major things I'll just point out real quickly, the two other major milestones that the project has had was the DEX aggregation feature, which we've already talked about, and then the recent launch of our savings vault, which is essentially a product that allows people to do single-sided yield on L1 assets. So you can deposit Bitcoin and earn Bitcoin on your Bitcoin, and that's basically split fees from swaps through the Bitcoin pool without exposure to the RUNE asset. So whereas a normal LP would have to put up both Bitcoin and RUNE, we're using a combination of protocol-owned liquidity on the RUNE side and then customer deposits on the Bitcoin side to enable single-sided asset yield, which for many, like that's like that earn product is another holy grail, you know, in DeFi. It's something that, you know, BlockFi, Celsius, all of these players that went bottom up trying to do that. It's something that we think we've found a way to do sustainably, because BlockFi and Celsius never had the liquidity pools. They never had the swapping mechanism. There was nowhere for that yield to come from. But because THORChain provides such a important utility of allowing people to swap between Bitcoin and Ethereum, we can actually provide sustainable yields on those deposits. So we think that we found sort of the key. Like you can't have you know, a fixed rate savings product in crypto without also having the utility of something like THORChain's cross-chain swaps. So that was another huge milestone, is the savings feature. Yeah, I think someone just posted a tweet to it as well. It's one of the most
Yeah,
sought
I
after.
pinned that up for you right there, just so people could jump in and check out the vaults.
Cool. Yeah, I think there's something like $5 or $6 million has been deposited to savings vaults, and
Wow.
you can see
8.4 million.
Oh, even bigger.
So it's
Yep.
I mean it's still a drop in the bucket compared to like what we saw in the deposits on BlockFire and Celsius. But what we've seen is that it hasn't been dominated by whales. You can actually look at like the distribution. It's actually like a lot of little people. There's over 1,000 unique savers who have decided to come in, deposit $2,000-$3,000 worth of Bitcoin, and you can see provably on chain what their position in that vault is worth now. And anyone can deposit or withdraw at any time. There's no lockups. It's all transparent on chain. You can go to the Bitcoin address. You can see the Bitcoin there. It's all completely like, we don't need proof of reserves. We've been proof of reserves since day one. And so I think that's just like another thing that, as we move into this next era, or this, in crypto's evolution, people are going to demand that. Like it wasn't demanded before, but now that so many people have been burned, they're going to start asking to see this stuff. They're going to start making wiser choices about where they put their money, and they're only going to put their money in protocols that can prove at any given moment that they're solvent. And so that's that kind of plays into our sort of economic security model, our churn, our nodes, essentially the process to become a validator, the vaults. So there's a ton of stuff we could get deeper into if you guys are interested in hearing about security. But again, that's sort of like my passion. So we'll only go there if that's what people are interested in talking about.
Well, yeah. I mean, you brought up a few really intriguing points that I could jump back into for sure. I will go to a bit of an aside just for anybody who's not familiar. A DEX aggregator is comparable, real life example. Think of Kayak or something like that, how it can compare hotel prices, trip prices, something like that, and gives you the best options between multiple sites. A DEX aggregator does that between fees and the price you'd have to pay on different swaps. So like, that's just a quick aside. I know some people obviously technically understand what that is, but I just always like to give a real life quick example. In terms of your other utilities, I will say one of the things that really stood out to me, because education is something that I really push and I take seriously, is what you guys are doing to teach people about liquidity pools. You guys essentially have, for lack of a better term, your liquidity pool university, that you guys are actually teaching people how to understand and how to really properly utilize a product like you're building. So it's not exactly the security aspect, but I think that's a huge differentiator in a way that you guys can build up that trust with people, and trust and security do somewhat go hand in hand in this space. So I think we can transition to security after that, but I wanted to touch on the trust that you guys are starting to build and the educational knowledge you're providing through your university there.
Yeah, that's a great call out. We just have such an engaging community and people who are super passionate about DeFi, and so we're super lucky to have all these people that are interested, as you said, just educating users, because DeFi is not going to get the mass adoption that we want or we need without a general understanding of how these things work. So yeah, LP University is it's actually an external team. It's not even a core. I would say it's a very important part of the ecosystem, but it's not even part of the core team of THORChain, like the developers or anything like that. It's actually an external team. Shout out to Baloney Bones over there. He started this, I think, right when single chain ChaosNet launched. And the whole goal was to teach people about these kind of foreign concepts like impermanent loss and slippage, and how liquidity pools work as they as price moves against the two assets in the pool. What happens to your liquidity underneath? How do swap fees accrue? and teaching people about general strategies for earning yield safely with their crypto, which is of course the whole goal when you're contributing to a liquidity position. And as THORChain kind of expands and builds these new financial primitives that are complicated, it's going to be super important to keep that educational content flowing. So in our ecosystem, we have actually a lot of contributors in that kind of realm. We have, of course, LP University, which has a Discord, and you can kind of go in and ask questions. And again, shout out to Baloney Bones for creating that. We also have Grassroots Crypto, which is a kind of a YouTube channel, and they also post Medium articles, and they do deep dives on the mechanics underpinning THORChain. And then runebase.org, kind of more of a news site almost that kind of keeps up with all of the goings on in the ecosystem. So yeah, shout out to all those guys. If you guys, if you're more interested in learning about kind of the mechanics of everything, definitely join LP University Discord. Definitely follow Grassroots Crypto and runebase.org. And we can deep dive more into kind of like the more advanced financial kind of primitives that THORChain is working on. But those are the great sites to kind of follow. I don't know, Pluto, if there's any others to mention.
No, I think that covers it. I think one of the really interesting things is like THORChain is primarily, like you said earlier in the call, a back-end protocol. So we essentially have a technical contract, technical specification about how funds move. But beyond that, THORChain, doesn't offer support. For example, it's not, it's not like it's not like one of these protocol projects where it's like the UI, the smart contracts, the support, the marketing, like not all of it is done in-house. We've seen that sort of centralized effect that even a lot of decentralized exchanges or exchanges that claim to be decentralized have, where it's all kind of happening under one roof and everyone's like coordinating, working together. So while that's made it, in my opinion, more difficult on us to not have that sort of centralized control over branding, messaging, education, it's actually led to more organic community-based education. And really it's up to, we've made it up to the integrators to be the ones to educate their users. And so really, what we do as THORChain is we focus on building the core protocol, and we focus on outreach to teams that are building products. And then we educate those teams so that they can properly educate their users. So in that sense, THORChain, it's like it's really infrastructure as a service rather than a product itself. But we are very closely tied to the builders of products in our ecosystem to give them the materials that they need. But ultimately, all of the exchanges building on THORChain, DeFi Spot, THORSwap, they all have their own function for how they educate their users, how they provide support to their users as well. And so what we find is that actually creates a more robust ecosystem at the end of the day than having sort of everything centralized under one roof.
Incredible. And I appreciate you going into so much detail there for me. And Mary, I'll pass the mic back to you because I did steal the last two questions away. So I'll let you jump back in there if you wanted to kind of play off of that or transition maybe into a little bit of a different topic. But I appreciate you guys giving me a couple questions back to back, and I'll throw it over to Mary.
Great. Thank you, Maurice. I think, didn't you want to talk more about security?
Yeah, no, if the gentleman wanted to kind of use that question to transition into the security aspect and how they're trying to, build up, some of the things that, these centralized exchanges have maybe lost some trust or some sentiment in, that's not a bad idea.
Yeah, we have the expert here. Pluto, I think, is in security, right?
Yeah, sure, but I can't take any credit for these ideas. I mean, these were ideas that were laid out, by the founding team in their original white paper. And when I read it, it was honestly like a jaw drop moment for me, like in terms of just how well thought out the security model is. And when I say security in this sense, I'm talking about economic security, not the actual, bits and bytes technical security, but the actual what are the incentives of the players in the network, and how do those all align to make it so that everyone is sort of financially incentivized to do the right thing? And how do we make it so that the node operators are not incentivized to steal from the vaults? And that's sort of where the key piece of where RUNE fits in. So as Eridanis already alluded to, RUNE has the important characteristic as being the anchor asset for all of the pools in the network. And because RUNE is the anchor asset for all those pools, then we know how to price all of the assets relative to each other. And so just by virtue of that means there's no need for an oracle. So whereas many cross-chain bridges like Wormhole or any of these bridges, they're actually they don't have native liquidity pooled on it's not an AMM, it's a bridge, right? So they have to use oracles or third parties to tell them how to price their assets, and so that introduces an additional risk for bridges that THORChain does not have. So THORChain actually has no external dependencies. We're not going out to any API and calling and saying, hey, what's the price of this? We know the price of this relative because of the depths of the pools relative to each other. And so just that alone, it was such a aha moment for me when I read it. Was THORChain is really its own self-encapsulated protocol that has no external dependencies. That in and of itself strengthens the security posture a ton already. And so the RUNE asset is provides that. The more demand that there is to provide liquidity on THORChain, the more demand there will be for RUNE, because RUNE is the asset that has to be paired against all of those liquidity positions. And so you can see there how more as Eridanis and his team goes out and integrates into more wallets and more users start swapping through these liquidity pools, it generates more fees, which in turn creates more of an incentive for people to pool liquidity on THORChain, because everyone wants to access a 20% yield. If there's basically if you have a pool that has $20 million in assets, but it's doing $10 million a day in volume, that's like 50% APY. So basically, first you solve the problem of volume, then that you'll attract more liquidity, and then from there, the next thing that we have to figure out is how to scale the economic security. And so that's where RUNE also plays in, is not just on the liquidity pooling side, but also on the network security. And so, and again, that's economic network security. So how do we have $100 million in exogenous assets in THORChain vaults, and not have some incentive for nodes to collude with each other to essentially get enough signatures to basically steal all the funds? And the way that we do that is by requiring RUNE to be bonded into the network to become a validator. And so every 2.5 to 3 days, there's essentially what's called a churn process, which is, again, it's part of our proof of reserves. One of the concepts of a proof of reserve audit, and something that you'll see a centralized exchange doing, is basically moving money around in their wallets back and forth. They're doing that as sort of an auditing exercise, because proving that you have the reserves is only one part of the audit. You also have to prove the liveness of the funds. You have to prove that you still control those tokens. And so THORChain actually does that every 3 days under the hood in what's called a churn. So every 3 days, the old vaults are rolled over into new vaults, and all the funds are sent to the new vaults, and the old keys are dumped and the new keys are used. And that basically proves to everyone, not only do these assets exist on chain, but they're constantly being swapped in and out. And so to become a part of the new validator set, you have to essentially bid RUNE. And so right now, the minimum, the de facto minimum bid to become a validator is around 600,000 or 700,000 RUNE. And so every for every one rune, so for every $1 of Bitcoin in the Bitcoin pool, there not only has to be $1 of rune on the other side of that liquidity pool, but there also has to be $1 of rune bonded by the nodes. And so there is an actual upper limit on how much funds can be pooled in THORChain before we hit that security cap. So there's a bit of a self-imposed capital inefficiency of THORChain, right? If you look at a centralized exchange, centralized exchanges are extremely capital efficient because they can just accept infinite customer deposits, credit your account, and their concept of security, like they don't have any skin in the game. If they lose your assets, they don't lose anything. They just lose your assets. But if a THORChain validator tries to steal an asset from a liquidity pool, what actually happens is they get that bond that they put up slashed. And so they stand to lose more money than they would gain by stealing the assets because of the inherent value of Rune that is pooled in the liquidity pools. So you can start to see how the value that the liquidity providers put into the pools sets the price of Rune. Node operators have to bond Rune into the pool to make sure that they don't steal from those liquidity providers. So it really is this incentive network where at no point is it game theoretically optimal for anyone to actually steal in this scenario. So that's sort of the novel economic security model that was devised by THORChain. And it's really quite clever because it aligns the incentives of the node operators, of the liquidity providers, and it does so in a way that would never make it profitable to steal. So I think that that's just one of the key things. Is like, you know, THORChain made this decision consciously, knowing that it would potentially hamstring its growth in the earlier years. Whereas, you know, you can look at other companies, like who's doing what is it called? Eridanus, help me. What's the one that
Stargate, Layer Zero?
Like Layer Zero and Stargate, their relayer model doesn't have any such bonding. So while they can, you know, they basically were able to accept like $100 million in deposits overnight with no actual like economic security backing to it. And so while we made the conscious decision to essentially cap our growth, we did so because we want to run in this sort of optimal security place at all times. I hope that all makes sense. It's quite complex, but
no, very much so. And I think I'd be kicking myself later if I didn't address, you know, kind of that potential elephant in the room or a change that may be upcoming. And I know I'll defer to another project that I've been following. You know, it's kind of somewhat a competitor, but ApeSwap had gone about recently going through with a geo-blocking of, you know, any residents in the United States and Canada, which I kind of fall into that bucket of. And from that sense, they've had to geo-block people because anything that produces yield is being looked at as a security going forward as of, you know, whenever that legislation goes into effect. So people are making those early changes to address that concern. So obviously, you know, with yield being something that you guys do offer through the project, I wanted to touch on that potential hurdle coming up for you guys and how you may go about addressing it as a team or locationally.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. And, you know, THORChain is really not domiciled in any one jurisdiction or country. THORChain is operated, again, in a decentralized fashion, decentralized and anonymous fashion. I think there's something like 92 or 93 validators that operate the network currently, and they are all over the world. So, you know, there's not a majority in any one country. You know, it's not not servers that are kind of paid with a company credit card. It's independent, individual, anonymous node operators that, again, bond the Rune that Pluto was talking about. join the network and start executing swaps on behalf of the network and validating transactions. And we don't know who these operators are. There is not one consortium of individuals that makes decisions on behalf of the network. The validators themselves operate the network and run the governance of the network. So they, for all of the major decisions and all the major updates, each node operator needs to sign on their approval for that to get enacted. That's kind of how the governance works. So when it comes to geo locking certain features or blacklisting or whitelisting, none of that happens at the protocol level. There's no built-in mechanism in THORChain to block swappers from a certain jurisdiction. That type of limiting functionality, that's never going to be built into the protocol layer, just like it's not going to be built into hopefully the Ethereum protocol or the Bitcoin protocol. THORChain is the same in that way, where it's just a backend protocol that's executed with computers across the world. Where those decisions will come down to is really the front end interfaces that integrate with THORChain. So THORSwap and Thor Wallet and Edge Wallet and Trust Wallet and all of these wallets and projects that integrate with THORChain and allow their users to swap across blockchains with THORChain will need to decide if they're going to geo-lock their users from using THORChain or providing liquidity on THORChain if it goes against the laws of their jurisdiction. So that's kind of up to them. But again, yeah, at the base protocol layer, that's not going to be implemented.
Yeah.
Terrific answer. Sorry about that. I just had to say, very, very well thought out.
Yeah, definitely good answer, Eridanis. I fall on sort of like the a bit of the more pragmatic side, which is like, if you end up poking the hornet's nest, there's not a lot that you can do, especially we've seen even like Rocket Pool, for example, and Lido Finance, which sort of make up enough of the proof of stake, voting power to alter the course of the Ethereum network. They're both headquartered, or they run infrastructure in the United States. So at the end of the day, if the United States wanted to say, hey, we need people to start, blacklisting, using this sanction address, I would assume that they would be able to compel those companies to do that and to essentially. So my point is that at the end of the day, everyone who's operating a server for any decentralized network is still subject to the laws of whatever geography that they're operating within. And so what I see as the future of decentralized networks is that people will just move their mining operations, their validations operations to jurisdictions that are more friendly to the cause of decentralization and of cryptocurrency and blockchain in general. And what that's ultimately going to do is it's going to create a decision for regulators. Do we want to miss out on the benefits of this innovation? Do we want to miss out on the tax dollars, on the economic benefits? Are Google and Amazon, are they going to step up and actually make a case and push back against the United States government? And if they say, hey, you can't run this, they're going to say, well, look, these are paying customers, and we believe in this industry and in people's freedom to be able to transact in a neutral and unopinionated manner. That's I think the conversation that's going to start to play out in the global audience. And if it ends up happening that all the THORChain validators in the United States have to shut down and move their operations to a more friendlier jurisdiction, then so be it. That's part of the design of THORChain with the churn mechanism that I mentioned before. Anyone can basically say, like, look, I need to leave. They give up they basically send back their portion of the vault funds, and they can shut down and they can spin back up using that same bond in a new jurisdiction. So we really, you know, I think that there's no such thing as an uncensorable network, but I think that THORChain has done everything in its power to build a censorship-resistant network that is free of regulatory capture and has the ability to transcend the boundaries of any national entity.
Yeah, that's a great point. The other thing I want to, as you're mentioning, like each independent validator kind of can choose their own adventure when it comes to, you know, the regulatory concerns of their you know, supposed or wherever their, you know, kind of hardware is. So each validator could choose, you know, to blacklist transactions coming from the United States. I mean, they can run, you know, some custom software on top of the Thor node image that prevents them from observing or signing an outbound to an address that potentially will come from, you know, the United States. They have that option to do that. Of course, they might earn some slash points from the network and lose some of their rewards. But, you know, they have that option. And so if they want to remain in the United States and, you know, be compliant, that could be an option for them as well. But, you know, more likely, as Pluto is mentioning, they would go find somewhere where they're not hindered and they can earn, you know, their rewards safely. So I think, Pluto, I mean, that's kind of the vision. And I think that, again, I agree with Pluto. That's going to be kind of like the long-term movement, you know, if the regulatory environment in the United States kind of clamps down further.
Well put. And go ahead, Mary.
So guys, you said that you don't know who runs these nodes, but do you know where in the world they are? How are they spread out all over the world, or where are they mainly?
Let me find the tweet. Let me find the tweet. There's a really cool map. But yeah, it's global. I think every continent except Africa and Antarctica we have validators in.
Okay. And how much? You said how much you need now? If I want to start a node now, what's required? What do I need to do or have?
So the minimum defined by the network is 300,000 RUNE. So that would be, I don't know, I can't do that math. Is that like $500,000 US dollars? However, you know, it's basically kind of like a bidding war, for lack of a better word, to get in, to basically to churn in. So for all the standby nodes waiting to churn in, every 3 days a churn happens, and only the largest posted bond will end up making it into the active set. So right now the minimum. Oh shoot! Hold on. Let me. I'm just looking up the minimum.
But if that's it's a fairly high amount, right? It's not for everyone to to just jump in with my computer and start.
No. It's definitely an advanced thing.
It has to be like it has to be. It's probably not even just one person. It's more like a company or organization behind a node then, or
it could be.
There's definitely organizations that run, you know, a node or two. Nine Realms runs nodes as well. We are probably the largest operator of nodes on behalf of clients. But yeah, it's like I mentioned before, you know, the THORChain network is extremely complex just from an infrastructure and architecture perspective. Not only it'll never be the type of network that can just be run, you know, on a home computer or on a Raspberry Pi. Like I know, you know, that was one of the key design decisions in Ethereum when they were building out their proof of stake, was like Vitalik really wanted anyone to be able to validate transactions on you know, from a home computer on commodity hardware. The simple fact that we're doing cross-chain, that we have to run the Bitcoin, the Ethereum, the Binance chain, full nodes for every single chain, plus the Thor node, you know, validation application itself. I mean, it's a pretty big thing. Like just the cloud spend for a validator is around like $4,000 a month. So it takes some pretty serious hardware. You can build it out and run it yourself at home. But this is not like amateur stuff, you know. It's very, and you have to make sure that all of those full nodes are synced 100% at all times, because if your validator misses a transaction, does not observe the transaction inbound or outbound from a vault, you actually can get slashed and lose some of your rewards. So it's a very high stakes game, and not everyone is even qualified to run a node on THORChain.
Yeah, that makes it seem more secure also in some ways, I think. So that's good.
Yeah,
I wasn't going to
exactly.
start one node, by the way.
Well, I mean, there's and no doubt there will be some companies that come along and offer, maybe like a liquid staking on THORChain. Like that's not something that we can prevent from happening, but we have been very adamant that that people be extremely wary about products like that, because at the end of the day, it's not your keys, not your crypto anymore at that point.
But that means also because I wanted to come to this question, how can I as an end user, or like what's in it for me, for a normal user? I buy the token, I buy RUNE, and what can I do? I can stake it somewhere, right, on a node, and then earn yield or earn some rewards.
That's one of the interesting things about the THORChain design, is that we purposefully did not add a staking mechanism from the get-go. Like you won't find any mention of the word stake in the THORChain white paper, and it's because you have to have exogenous assets other than RUNE to make the THORChain network valuable. There's so many tokens out there that their entire tokenomics just rely on staking, which all that staking is doing is saying, hey, we're going to release a small percentage of our tokens, and then if you lock those up, we'll give you more tokens at a later date. So you're basically saying, okay, I'll lock my bag so that I can be your exit liquidity. Like I don't get staking. Why staking is like,
Breach.
I get that it's like it's something that everyone wants. They want to feel like their money is like being put to use. But like my version of staking is just buying RUNE and holding it, because I know that over time the organic demand for cross-chain swapping will ramp up as more people integrate THORChain, which will create more demand for providing liquidity, which creates more demand for the RUNE asset itself. So I think that in and of itself, like THORChain doesn't need a staking mechanism. That said, we are still trying to figure out if there are ways to get just the average RUNE holder more involved, and if there is a way for example, users to provide RUNE as part of protocol-owned liquidity, which is something that we're going to be rolling out soon. So we're not like closed-minded to the idea of having like a RUNE on RUNE sort of staking-ish model, but the most important thing for THORChain is attracting exogenous capital. So deepening the Bitcoin pool, deepening the Ethereum pool, and the Savers product that we rolled out is perfect for that. People can just come, and it's literally the interface is so easy. You literally just send Bitcoin to an address, and your Bitcoin address is essentially accounted or credited with your deposit, and you immediately start earning yield. So the best thing that you can do as a THORChain user is either to like buy and hold the asset because you think that there's going to be a long-term increase in demand, not financial advice, or you can just deposit an exogenous asset that you have Bitcoin, and you want to earn more Bitcoin on top of Bitcoin, then you can do that as well. But when we took a look at the all of these economic incentives, and we just didn't see any place where it really makes sense to pay someone RUNE unless they're doing something valuable for the network, like validating transactions. So that's the only or providing liquidity. There are block rewards in providing liquidity. There's also the nodes get paid out from the reserve as well in RUNE for providing that or rendering that valuable service of validating transactions. But that's the only thing that I think really makes sense. The only type of user to really incentivize is on that bonding side, bonding the RUNE to validate. And so that's really the only activity that pays out RUNE on RUNE yield.
So
Awesome.
if I have a Bitcoin and I want to like put it in your liquidity pool then, or I mean, yeah, I can go to your university, liquidity pool university, and learn about how to do this, right?
Yep. Yeah, you can also just you can go to like app.thorswap.finance. So THORSwap is one of the they were pretty much like the earliest DEX, and they're a fully featured DEX built on top of THORChain. So if you go to app.thorswap.finance/earn, there's a really simple interface there for depositing Bitcoin. And as of right now, the Bitcoin pool is earning 4.68% APR on the single-sided Bitcoin. And so the way that dynamic works with single-sided yield versus like dual-sided LPs, which is like the more traditional LP where you're subject to impermanent loss, they are actually, because they're taking on more risk, because they have dual-sided asset exposure, they get a better yield on the pool. So it's almost like a preferential thing where like the Bitcoin pool for dual LPs could be paying out like 7.5%, but the single-sided yield, because they're taking less risk, they get less reward, so they're only getting like 4% APR. So depending on your like risk tolerance and how sophisticated you are, you can either choose to, be a dual LP and like manage or hedge risk on that position, or if you're just like a typical user that just want to stack like satoshis on satoshis, I would recommend the Earn product, which is the single-sided asset yield.
Great. So there you hear, guys. If you want to do this, go to that. What you mentioned. Can we type that somewhere? Maybe.
Yeah. Let me find a tweet and I'll send it over.
Great. So I wanted to ask you also, how much time do you have? So we don't, because we are already over an hour here. It's so interesting, and I'm sure we have more questions.
Yeah, I don't have a hard stop. I'm happy to keep talking.
Yeah, me neither.
Okay, let's go. So Maurice, do you have more questions for them?
Yeah, I mean, your question was terrific, Mary. I think you really do break down, what, as an end user, as an investor, what people will want to know. So I appreciate you kind of going into that route. And I loved what the gentleman mentioned earlier about their thoughts on staking, because I always joke, I look at staking rewards or staking allocations the same way I look at, P2E rewards to the most part. It's essentially just devaluing your token. And unless, like they said, you have capital or revenue coming in to offset what's going out, it's going to hurt the ecosystem over time. So very, very smart response. And I love to see that they're we share a similar mindset there.
I agree.
Yeah, it's really tough in this environment, right? Because with staking, when the markets are bad, people are just looking to essentially take advantage of products that are seeing higher volume, and they're not really benefiting the ecosystem. They're just essentially mitigating the losses they see other places by the few projects that are actually seeing success. So, in a negative market also, if a project's doing well and then they bring in staking, we've seen kind of a trend that it does hurt their trajectory. So I hope that you guys continue kind of doing it the way that you've done it. I mean, obviously 4+ years of running the project has been successful. So excited to see how it continues to grow.
Yeah, I would just say all the protocols that sacrifice long-term sustainable organic growth for like short-term incentives like staking and airdrops, those are going to be the projects that don't make it through multi-year bear cycles, that are going to get washed out. And when you see us emerge into the next bull market, you're going to see THORChain right up there at leading that, because we've made these conscious decisions to cap our growth even when the sentiment is pure frenzy and rally. We've never let that change how we designed the principle, designed the core protocol from first principles around this idea of in order to provide any kind of yield, you have to provide some kind of utility or service. And that's what THORChain's cross-chain swaps do. And Savers just, adds to the demand for that and deepens liquidity pools. So, it's very much a conscious decision that we made. And, at times we see, projects that we don't necessarily think, deserving to be having, as much hype as they do, but they're often the ones that get washed out within even a couple months in some cases. So I would say if people are just looking for like a quick whatever, like that's not what THORChain is, but THORChain is setting itself up as the multi-year native asset backbone for cross-chain settlement, and that's something where our commitment to that is never going to waver, for short-term gains.
Great. We won't have any live questions today, guys, but I have a question from someone sent to me, and they talk about some upgrade that you have done in June, and they want to know what has changed and how it has benefited the project. Is that something you can talk about?
I don't know.
What did we do in June?
Yeah, was that mainnet? Is that what?
I'm not really sure what it means, to be honest.
Up in terms of upgrades, we go through an upgrade like every 3 weeks or so. There's a new version being pushed
so
to
the one
network.
in June, what was that about? No, just kidding.
I'm trying to think.
I think that they're probably just referring to mainnet.
Yeah, probably.
Probably, if that's a big thing, yeah.
Mainnet was the designation that we essentially, in a ways it's like pretty arbitrary, but most protocols like go to mainnet, in after like their first year or whatever. It took us 3 whole years to get to mainnet. And really, I can link an article to, what mainnet meant to THORChain. But basically it was taking a holistic look at the, at the cryptographic innovation, at the security model, at the, volatility of the different liquidity pools, at the sustained organic volume, and seeing, everything trending up and to the right, having, 12 months without, any like sustained downtime, and then really making the decision that at that point we were comfortable with, the title of mainnet. So it was mostly like a ceremonial declaration, but we believe now that THORChain is in its next phase of evolution, that we have ironed out, the major kinks in the protocol, and that the foundation is rock solid, and that we're comfortable with that title of mainnet. I think the only other thing that they could have been referring to is also the DEX aggregation, which again, like I think that the big 2 innovations in 2022 were DEX aggregation and the savings product. And then we also have a lending product that will be coming in 2023. And that is also going to be an absolute game changer. But there's, that still has to go through rigorous auditing. It has to go through the nodes governance to formally adopt as well. So there's still, plenty of hurdles to clear before that product sees mainnet.
Yeah, that's great. I also wanted to ask about the future a little bit. Where do you see yourself, or where do you see THORChain in like 3 to 5 years? What's going to happen? What do you hope for?
I think, as we've been talking about, of course, these big features like lending are coming up, and they need to be battle tested and rolled out safely. And that's going to be super exciting. And that's going to be, first of its kind in the crypto world, or, in the finance world, really. So that's very exciting. And we'll see hopefully a lot of products be built on top of that. But I think, longer term, 3 to 5 years. And as we've been talking about, like, the vision of THORChain and kind of the destiny of THORChain is to kind of, disappear into the background, but be integrated everywhere, and be providing the native asset cross-chain rails for the entire crypto world. And so in 3 to 5 years, our goal and, what we're pushing towards is to have THORChain be integrated in every single major wallet, potentially even some centralized exchanges. The centralized exchanges, we've had a few talks with some of them to provide our, earn product for their users and provide, safe and sustainable yield. But yeah, in 3 to 5 years, THORChain, the vision is to have them, to have it integrated everywhere in every single major wallet and every single major crypto application, and to be, just humming along and, executing cross-chain swaps for users, earning yield, in-kind yield for users, and that's kind of the vision. And our goal really is to make THORChain the largest DEX in the world, and because I think right now we hover around 9, 10, 11, or 12, largest DEX in terms of volume. And I think we really have a chance at becoming, the largest DEX because we are cross-chain, we are chain agnostic. We can access chains that other DEXs cannot. We can do things that other DEXs cannot right now. And, hopefully that's kind of the vision, is just providing those native asset rails for the entire ecosystem. That's, this is, THORChain really exists to support the entire crypto ecosystem. We want to support every fundamental project, and we think that the largest innovations of crypto are still to come, and we'll be there and ready to support those ecosystems, and that's the goal.
That's great. So
and I would just add also, because bridges suck, and there's way too much risk in bridges. Like I would love to see a future where bridges don't exist, where if you need to go across chain, you just settle into the native asset on that chain and then do what you got to do. I think people should start to treat centralized exchanges and bridges as like public restrooms. Like if you absolutely have to use them, like get in, do your business, and then get out. But you should just be holding whatever asset that you are long on its native network, and not be holding any wrapped assets, because wrapped assets are just an unbounded risk. Like what's the possibility of your native asset just disappearing? It doesn't exist. But the possibility of someone draining one side of a bridge and having no way to exit from the wrapped asset to the native asset is just too high. So I hope that in 3 to 5 years time, all networks stop building their own, I don't want to see a world where Avalanche builds their own Bitcoin bridge and Ethereum, has all these custodians that have their own Bitcoin bridges. Like everyone should just do DeFi on Ethereum. And then if they want to hold Bitcoin, just swap into Bitcoin and hold native Bitcoin, that's the world for crypto where I want to see, where everyone's sort of counterparty risk is reduced as much as possible, and everyone just holds their keys, their crypto, and the only time that they're losing custody of their funds is like if they're going across chain, or if they're locking it in some DeFi protocol.
Awesome. Now, I did want to kind of take Mary's question about the future a little bit further, but different spin on it. So what's the future of the actual token now? So RUNE, and what would you guys say are some future use cases or some benefits that holders of the actual token are going to be able to see kind of moving forward?
I think, the RUNE token obviously is most productive when it's used in the network. Obviously, the core team and developers and the ecosystem, really, we want RUNE holders to obviously either HODL if they want to, if they believe in the project, or provide a service to the network by either using RUNE to pool liquidity in a dual-sided LP. If you're a node operator, to use RUNE and earn RUNE to bond to the network. And if you know a node operator, there's a thing called bond providers, where you can have up to 5 individual wallets provide the bond for a validator and kind of pool your RUNE that way. So I think there's already so many use cases for RUNE right now. There's already RUNE really powers the network. And it's a very powerful asset because of that. I mean, I think you look at a lot of DeFi projects and they have a token and there's really no use for it. There's no purpose for the token, and that cannot be farther from the truth in the case of THORChain, which is, one reason why, personally, not financial advice, of course, I'm bullish on the token itself. Another interesting, kind of, I guess, benefit that you could see, with the lending design, one of the kind of mechanics of the lending design is actually this burn mechanism of Rune. So when you open loans, you actually will be net burning Rune in order to open the loan. And there's obviously a lot more to it, and it's pretty complicated, but that actually kind of benefits all Rune holders together, in that, as we probably see this uptick in loans being opened in the beginning of lending being rolled out, we probably will see a net deflation event for Rune. So that kind of will be a nice benefit for all Rune holders. But in general, I think already Rune kind of stands on its own in terms of the benefits and the powerful use cases it already provides for the ecosystem.
Yeah, I like to think of Rune as essentially a leveraged bet on all of the cryptos that underlie the asset pools on THORChain itself. So if you think about basically the depth of all the pools, Bitcoin and Ethereum being the largest, BNB, BUSD, Tether being the next 3 or 4 or 5. If you basically take if you imagine a world where all Rune is either locked into the protocol or bonded in nodes, then you basically end up with it's essentially like the value of Rune is deterministic based on how much exogenous or L1 capital is pooled into the system. So you can actually make a prediction that says, okay, if you think that there is going to be $10 billion, in liquidity pooled on THORChain one day, you could actually use that to make some assumptions how much you think is locked in in pools, in bond, or circulating, to actually calculate what the price of Rune would be. And there's if you go on thorchain.com/Rune, there's a deterministic pricing calculator which allows you to kind of if you have different predictions about the value of different assets, and how much of that is pooled, I think that the bull case for THORChain is that it becomes the world's largest Bitcoin DeFi pool, and everyone is using it to swap between Bitcoin, Ethereum, and all the major tokens. And the Cosmos ecosystem has Atom and Osmosis, and they're basically using those within their ecosystem. And whenever they want to go to any other ecosystem, they're essentially having to basically use Rune to do that. So that's kind of like the I think the bull case. And lending is sort of like the third and final part of the Holy Trinity, where savings deepens the liquidity pools. Cross-chain swap is what provides yield to the liquidity pools, and lending is actually what allows the network to scale. By people taking out loans and burning Rune, they're essentially creating less of a circulating supply, which will increase the security of the network. So these three things all act together to create the product that THORChain is, that is backed by Rune. And no one of those things, just cross-chain swaps on its own is already like a huge innovation. But when combined with savings and lending, that really creates the scale to allow people to either take basically do a savings which doesn't have a single asset risk exposure to it, or do lending, which is essentially like using collateral for leverage. And then these three functions together create sort of this like balancing effect, which allows Rune to expand and contract as demand for those different products arises.
Now, you kind of organically already answered this one, but a lot of projects or top coins, top tokens moving forward, one of their major use cases that they'll talk on for future adoption is having it as a payment solution, right? But I think the way you answered it, seeing that your best case scenario is that it's all pooled or locked within the bonds, obviously having RUNE used as a payment solution takes it out of the ecosystem. So I think you already organically kind of answered it, but I will just ask you the question, and how do you view, having RUNE as a payment solution compared to how a lot of these other projects or coins are trying to get, BTC used and accepted as payment in airports and this and that. SHIB is trying to get accepted. Other utility tokens are trying to push to have it, used on credit card, used in Apple Pay. So what are your take on, RUNE as an in real life method of payment, or would you prefer it to be utilized within the liquidity side of things, just because it's not going to devalue the price?
Yeah, I don't think there's any need or vision for that to happen. I mean, especially, certainly in the core developers, that's not been discussed. And again, yeah, as Pluto was saying, RUNE is more productive, most productive when it's locked in, in the network, providing some sort of utility. So that's really our goal, is to maximize the amount of RUNE that's in use in bonds or in savers or being burned through loans. So that's really, those are the three things, and nothing else matters. Like that's the narrow focus of the team.
Know what you do and do it well. I love it. Awesome. I know, Mary, you were going to jump on, so I will pass it back. Sorry for cutting in with that follow-up.
Yeah, thank you. I was just going to ask, you can swap all these tokens, but can you also swap right to stablecoin if you want to with your swap, or do you have to go somewhere else then?
Yeah. So there's four stablecoin pools in THORChain. I think we have BUSD, USDC, USDT, USDC on AVAX, and DAI maybe. So yeah, you can swap directly to any of those. And again, through the DEX aggregation feature, you can then access any stablecoin on the EVM networks if there's a liquidity pool out there for for them somewhere, which certainly there is. So really, any stablecoin on EVM chains you can access, and then directly through THORChain pools you can access the other ones I mentioned.
Okay, and do you have any partnerships coming or lined up, or that you work together with?
Probably none that I can mention publicly. I mean, we are constantly working with we are constantly working with external teams. Again, I mean, the big one, of course, that happened recently is Trust Wallet landed the THORChain integration for their in-wallet cross-chain swaps. They will be rolling out, so they've only rolled out Android, the integration in Android. They will be rolling out the iOS release with THORChain cross-chain swaps in it as well. Hopefully, we'll be seeing that in a week or two. So that's the kind of the next big one that's already public. And yeah, we're in talks with other teams similar to Trust Wallet in order to land those integrations. So again, nothing I can really publicly say right now.
Any chance of SafePal being one of the family members there?
I think we might have lost there, Dennis. You said SafePub?
SafePal is a wallet that I use.
Sorry, I just got a call. I don't know if I cut out there, but yeah, I'm back.
Have we talked to SafePal at all?
SafePal. How do you spell that? Let me look.
Like PayPal, but safe.
Oh, SafePal. Okay.
SafePal.
I don't think so.
I don't think that we've talked to them. If anyone has any warm intros with that team, feel free to introduce us, and we would be happy to speak to them. I mean, integrating cross-chain swaps into wallets has never been easier with THORChain, and it really is. It's like a 3-step process. You just hit an API, you tell it, what token you have, how much of it you have, what you want to swap to, and it tells you what address to send it to, what memo to send it with, and how much you should expect to get back, how much slippage that you'll pay. So like we've done a lot of work to make our APIs and our integrations, dead simple. So I would say for anyone who knows of a wallet team, if you have a favorite wallet that you want to see, you want to be able to swap natively between assets right in your wallet, without having to do any signups or logins, KYC or anything like that, just put us in touch, and we would be happy to speak with their team and show them, just how easy this is. I mean, it really is like a 3-step process to complete
Let's
a
hear
cross-chain
if
swap.
Alpha, can we bring on SafePal?
Yeah,
Tell
let's
them.
bring them up. Let's bring them up.
Let's bring them up.
SafePal
Is there
looks
is
great.
there an application process for like a wallet to try and reach out to you guys or apply to be looked at, in the ecosystem there?
No, I mean
From an integration standpoint?
they don't even need to talk to us. I mean, the documentation is all public. They can go and build the integration and not even say a word to our team. I mean, that we want to make it as easy as possible to integrate. We want to make it, publicly accessible, all the knowledge that you need to integrate. And so hopefully, down the line, obviously right now it's a very hands-on experience, and we actively reach out to these projects to help them integrate. But down the road, we're hoping that this will just happen and we don't even need to talk to them. So it's as easy as it can be. There's no signups, there's no account needed, there's no credentials, there's nothing. It's an open protocol that you can integrate with
That's
anyone.
great. But you
I'm
don't
gonna
have
need
your
you to
own
flip
wallet,
me.
right? There is
Sorry,
no
say again?
Thor wallet. Is there a Thor wallet?
There is a Thor wallet. Yep.
Valhalla or
Yeah.
something? No? Yeah?
Well, there's a mobile wallet called Thor Wallet, and yeah, it's an external team. It's like it's a wallet built that has THORChain integrated.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah. So it's a mobile wallet.
Nice.
Yeah,
I was just going to say, I might need you to flip me that another text there, Pluto, and I'll just pin up that application material, the documentation where somebody could just look, because I know there may be people listening in today that have wallets or teams, and that easy kind of sign up process would be great to know.
I got you.
We can post the document. Yeah, again, there's no like sign up process or application process, but yeah, there is the public documentation that you can look at and just get started through that. So yeah, Pluto can send that over.
Yeah,
And
you can also, anyone can literally just DM Eridanis or I, and we'll be happy to like jump on a call or just talk people through it. Like, it's really, I mean, it's so simple. But yeah, I wrote up this this quick start guide, and people, well, I'll DM that over to you real quick. Here we go. This is perfect. I'm sending that over to you right now.
that's great. So kind of you.
Here we go.
I like when teams wants to help, like personal like that, because it's important to reach mass adoption and to learn. I mean, the more people you teach, the more they can teach other people and talk about this. So it's very good.
Yeah. I'm really
absolutely
excited to get into this next stage of THORChain's development. Like the last 3 years have just been like a frenzy of software updates, of security audits, of hardening the network. We've had our fair share of downtime. We've had consensus failures that have halted the network for 12 hours, 24 hours. Like we've gone through a lot of things, and every time we've learned from it, and sometimes it's been painful, but we really feel like we've now hit a stride of operational maturity. And I think lending is going to be the last major feature that gets shipped. And then after that, the THORChain protocol itself will be largely, solidified. And from there, our two main focuses as Nine Realms will be to continue to integrate new chains, which is, that's a fairly straightforward process that doesn't really impact other parts of the protocol. So once we see that hardening of the core protocol itself, all it becomes is adding new chains and then going out and doing, evangelism and speaking to, developers, speaking to projects, to wallets, to, anyone who's looking to integrate, cross-chain liquidity. And I think that, for me at least, that'll be a lot less stress when we can start to worry less about, the operational complexity of the protocol and do more just like business development and outreach.
Yes. So what's the next chains coming on? Is there some that you can tell us about, or are they all secret?
No, actually, the nodes have already voted, and they've already voted, and they've expressed their desire to add Binance Smart Chain. And I think that was largely a result of Trust Wallet integrating with us. Because
I thought that was already on there. No?
Well, we have Binance
Beacon
Binance
chain.
Yeah, the BNB chain, which is different from Binance Smart Chain.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So
But that vote actually happened before Trust Wallet integrated. The nodes already had voted for Binance Smart Chain, or I guess it is called BNB Chain now. But yeah, I think we've started working on that integration. Unfortunately for Binance Smart Chain, the hardware costs for running the full nodes for that chain are very expensive. So I think we'll basically have to share the added cost in terms of what that will take for the validators, and they will have to make kind of a decision if that's worth it. The other chain that hopefully will be integrated soon is Dash. The Dash core team actually built the integration themselves, so they actually worked with the THORChain code to write that integration, and that infrastructure is actually very cheap. So that could be a good option as one of the next chains. And then after that, we're not sure. Things change so quickly that we never want to jump on a shiny new chain that is going to collapse in 3 months. I mean, we had Terra integrated, and that was kind of a nightmare to kind of unwind.
Oh yeah.
And so we're very cautious at this point of adding new chains, and we feel pretty good about the ones that we have, and I think other chains in the Cosmos ecosystem as well, like maybe Osmosis would be a good chain to add. So we're constantly kind of just looking around the ecosystem. We want the most economically significant chains. We want the chains that are going to bring the most volume and liquidity into THORChain. That's kind of the deal.
Sounds great. Maurice, did you have any more in-depth questions from your late
I mean,
research?
we could definitely be here for a while, but I do think we've covered off a lot. And I mean, these presentations are great as a first introduction for maybe some of those listeners in the crowd who hadn't previously heard about THORChain or understood that. And even myself, I was somebody who during the summer, I bought a little bit of RUNE just off a referral from a friend that I trusted, not really knowing really what it was. It was a buddy that I've known quite well. He sent me 2 plays in the past, both been very high level, utility driven plays. And he's like, hey, pick up some RUNE. And I was like, all right. And I threw a little bit in. And then I didn't do it. Sometimes I blind ape off referrals without knowing. And then when I really jumped in last night and we started talking with Alpha, I was like, oh my God, I'm holding this. I didn't even realize the two were connected. And then I started to deep dive. And again, I spent hours researching this because I was like, well, I'm holding this. I should probably really understand what I'm in here for. So again, I was so impressed by the research I was able to do. And you guys as a team and as speakers, very professional, extremely well thought out answers. And it's no wonder why anybody I've heard or, mentioned this too is like, oh, RUNE, super bullish project. And, it makes sense.
Yeah, I must say too that you're really good speakers. I mean, for someone like me, and I know we have lots of people in this community who are not native English speakers. And then when people talk fast, sometimes it's harder to follow. Even if we understand it, it's like in the brain it processes a little bit slower with a different language, So thank you for that. Although it was kind of complicated sometimes, I still understood you. Very good.
I'm sure we were talking kind of fast. I mean, Pluto and I obviously super excited about this project, so we could talk for hours endlessly about everything.
And we do a weekly every Friday, except this week we're off this week, but every Friday, if you guys go over and follow at THORChain, we do weekly Twitter Spaces hosted by Chad Thoreau and Chad Barraford. and Familiar Cow, who unfortunately couldn't make it today. And Eridanis and I frequently, come up and talk about, especially if there's a new feature that's coming out or a new chain or a new integration, we'll often come up and jump on and talk about those. And people should definitely come join those. And we do free form Q&A. And so if you have any questions, definitely encourage people to join for one of those and stay for the questions at the end.
Yeah, that's great. It's here on Twitter Space, you mean, on your Twitter account?
Yeah.
Great. But do you have any other socials? You mentioned like Discord for the university, right? For the LP university. And do you have also a Telegram group where you can ask questions if you have any?
So they should all be at the top if you go to THORChain.com, or at the bottom if you're on mobile. You'll be able to find links to LP University, RuneBase, Grassroots Crypto, our developer Discord, our white paper, our Telegram, our Twitter. Everything should be on the bottom there at THORChain.com.
Great.
Yeah,
and also people in here, please follow everyone. Follow everyone.
Yes,
absolutely.
I think if you go to the THORChain Twitter account, there is a link tree also. And that link tree will link you to, I think everything. It should link you to the Discord, all the different websites. So that's a good place to find info.
That's great. There is one thing that we haven't really talked too much about, and that is the name. Because, well, I'm from Sweden. I want to know who came up with all these names.
Yeah, the founding team of THORChain, they're from scattered throughout the world, but they got together and to be honest, I don't know the exact reasoning. I think they kind of just wanted something with a theme, and THORChain,
like Vikings, maybe.
They like Norse mythology. They like Vikings, but it's interesting if you actually look through the code of THORChain. There's Norse mythology references everywhere. Like the vaults that the validators secure are called Asgard vaults. There used to be these hot wallets called Yggdrasil vaults, and there's Ragnarok, and there's all these kind of Norse mythology names throughout. So yeah, I mean, it was the founding team back in 2018 that kind of made that decision.
That's great. I think we have maybe a question from the audience here. Ninja Talk. Arian, is it you? Are you here?
Hey, Mary. Yeah, it's me.
Hey, do you have a
I just
question?
it's not a question. It's more about to say and that what an amazing Twitter space, and kudos to the THORChain team over there, especially when it comes to the education part. I think especially during this phase of the market, it's something that this space needs. Not a lot of people are around right now, so educating is the key, especially that people will start again. When it comes to the new people getting into crypto, we need these education materials out there. So for everyone, and this is kind of like what we try to push as much as we can with our communities out there. Educate yourself, like 5, 10, 20 minutes. I don't know, no matter what, just commit a few minutes of your day to educate yourself. And you guys have that over there. So great job. Keep that, going, keep doing it. Because this is what will make the projects moving forward, like different from one to each other. It's about providing something else, something different, because some returns, gains, etc. You can find it in every project, right? All the projects will give you something, but having like extra thing, which is education, which will bring them like more wealth, let's say, because we are in the crypto space for the technology, for what crypto can do. But on top of that, it's forever making money, right? And you cannot make money. You can make money, of course, if you stand like, etc., by investing in project, but you need to educate yourself. So yeah, that's what I want to add. Mary and
Thank
Maurice,
you.
great job to both of you, and well done to the crypto miners for having this kind of Twitter space.
Yeah, we're
Well
very
said.
happy to have them here.
Thank you.
THORChain.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. So I have my special question at the end also, and I'm doing a little poll here, you can say. So when you eat pizza, do you prefer with or without pineapple on them?
I'm a no pineapple type of guy. I'm
No
simple.
pineapple. All right.
I like pepperoni. I like pepperoni pizza.
Okay.
I'm from New York, where you'll get like mugged if you put pineapple on pizza.
You get mugged?
Yeah, if you ask them to put it on your pizza in like Coney Island, they'll just laugh at you.
Okay.
That's
But do you
funny.
like it?
I
You've never tried it.
I personally like it, but I just, there's no opportunities for me to eat it here because I like to remain friends with my my local pizza shop.
It's the forbidden topping.
It's the forbidden topping.
Okay. Don't tell anyone I asked this then.
Okay.
Over there. Well, it was a great pleasure having you here, guys. And we have been here now 2 hours, and it doesn't feel like that. It feels like we could stay longer.
Seriously.
But maybe you can come back at some time. That would be awesome.
100%.
When next
Yeah,
big thing happens or something.
Yeah, we'd love to. We'll reach out once the lending feature is live. I mean, we could come
Yes.
talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah.
That would be great. Yeah. Can't wait for that.
Cool.
Super. So I want to have you give you the stage a little bit more and have like a closing statement and tell us something more about, or sum it up, or whatever you want to do.
Yeah. Well, yeah, first of all, thanks, Mary. Thanks, Maurice, and Crypto Miners for having us. This was so fun. Pluto and I love doing these things. So if anyone else, has a community like this and wants to bring us up and talk about THORChain, this is what we're passionate about. So yeah, I mean, again, THORChain, its vision is to provide native asset cross-chain swaps, to provide native asset in-kind yield, and to really allow DeFi to flourish, allow people to maintain custody of their crypto safely in their wallets, and just to do away with centralized exchanges, do away with these centralized black boxes where you deposit your crypto, they go gamble it on risky investments. You don't know where it is. You can't necessarily withdraw it. This is the financial system of the past. This is what we need to move away from. And THORChain, that's THORChain's vision. We want people to understand how to secure their crypto. We want people to be able to trade it natively for other cryptos on other chains, to earn yield on it safely and sustainably, and do away with the gatekeepers of financial freedom of the past. Because we have this amazing foundation of cryptocurrency, we don't need it anymore. And THORChain will help bring it there. I don't know, Pluto, if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, I would just say I know a lot of people, are suffering maximum pain at the moment. And it's because of these players and these institutions that, people thought that they could trust, and, who've turned, around and, basically backstabbed the entire industry and set us back years in growth. And, I just want everyone to know that, like, it sucks, and we're all experiencing a lot of pain as a result. But if you're still here and you're still interested in this space, and you're not giving up on it, and you believe in the in the values of what the decentralized financial ecosystem has to offer, just know that, like, there's other people out there that share your passion for that, and we're going to keep building to those values, and we're not going to sacrifice them. And yeah, we're just really happy to be a part of this ecosystem. And at this very historical moment, it feels like there's been a real shift in the tide. Like, people are really starting to understand and get it. And just even as a result of the events of the past month, we expected it to just kind of like bring everything to a standstill, but what actually ended up resulting was that there was a ton more interest in integrating THORChain now than ever before. So, suffice to say, like, from our perspective at least, the industry is still alive and well, and people are starting to kind of wake up to the fact that THORChain and projects like it are very much what's needed for this industry to continue to flourish. So we're just happy to be here and to still be alive, and we hope everyone makes it through, and everyone can prosper together as we pick up the pieces and rebuild this thing.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And Maurice, I know you probably want to say some final word as well.
Honestly, it's just been an absolute pleasure. I mean, Mary, Alpha, Wolverine, and the team there at Crypto Miners, anytime you guys invite me to co-host with you is always a pleasure. Pluto, Eridanis, you guys, extremely professional speakers. I mean, it was funny. I even joked to Alpha that I didn't even know that I was holding this project, but I just recognized the ticker symbol. And then I put 2 and 2 together, and I was like, it may sound funny to think somebody in my position will buy blindly, but I bought from somebody I trusted, who I know does the research, and very happy I made that decision. I mean, as Mary mentioned, this was a phenomenal educational experience here for the community. And for anybody who's looking to just further their understanding of, liquidity pools and how to get involved,